Hello and welcome to a special episode of Spotlight on Security Tech Insights. My name is Shelly Calhoun-Jones and I'm a principal technologist here at Cohesity. Today we're joined by Jed Wallace. Jed, would you like to do an introduction?
Not really, but I guess I'll go ahead and do it anyways. I'm Jed Wallace. I am a staff technologist here at Cohesity, and I'm here to talk some vulnerability management. Is that what you got me here for, Shelly?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay.
We're going to be discussing vulnerability management and its role into making sure that you have a safe, secure, and compliant VMware environment. And really, it's been ever more critical because, as we've seen, the threat landscape continues to evolve. And in fact, we've seen an increase in the amount of threats that are taking advantage of ESXi vulnerabilities, including ransomware in 2024. And so really the idea here is that we want to talk about vulnerability management. We want to discuss how having a well-fortified defense and inspecting those defenses can help ensure that an attacker can't easily breach your environment. We want to make sure that we can quickly respond, recover, and mitigate any possible damage. So that's what we have Jed on today. He's one of our V experts here at Cohesity. We're going to take a look at how vulnerability management can help increase an organization's resilience, including protecting yourself against threats. So, Jed, I know you've been in the industry for a while. Can you share how you've held or how you've handled vulnerability management in previous positions?
Oh, well, first I would ask is don't hint at my age again, please. That's really not cool. But yeah, we had strict patch management at my last position. We would prioritize security updates sometimes, depending on what alerts were out there. We subscribe to RSS feeds and keep our ears to the ground, right, about any current vulnerabilities that might be out there, whether it's software vulnerabilities or just something out in the wild, just floating around waiting to hit your environment. We would do things like rolling out our patches in a staggered way where there's time in between implementing the patches in lower environments, such as we would install the patches in, say, our dev environment first, let it bake for a couple weeks. Then if nothing, kind of popped up, we would roll over to test. We would install the patches in test. Same thing. Wait another week or so, let it bake, make sure nothing explodes. And then we would go on to staging. Same thing, rinse and repeat. And then, of course, if nothing breaks, we would move over to the patches into production. So
yeah, wow, that's interesting. So you really did take a staggered approach. Did you have a group of folks within your organization that might be more receptive to change, like a special set of end users that might kind of help you out with testing?
Yeah, actually, we actually had designated people in every department, whether it was like accounting, legal, stuff like that. There was like a designated person that would help us test patches and stuff. So
Okay.
imagine if you have an accounting software, which we did, and you need to roll out software patches to that specific accounting software. We were using virtual desktops, so we were able to push out the update to what we would call a development desktop, a version of that accounting image, test it there, have them make sure that all the functionality works, and if nothing was broke, then we would roll out to their production golden image for the virtual desktops that they're using. So
Nice.
So no matter if it was servers or if it was the end user's desktop, we kind of had it covered.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at Amazon, they had an image builder that you would use for updating EC2 instance images.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of neat because you could actually go in there, select the services or the products that you're working with, and it would just automatically update your images once you've completed the testing. It was kind of cool from a cloud perspective, at least. So
for sure, it's always good to have that central management, right?
Right. So what type of tools did you typically use to perform your vulnerability management, or I guess specifically to VMware products? Did you have any special tools that you worked with or other applications?
I've worked with several different tools, whether it was Nessus or Qualys or OpenVAS, to scan VMware infrastructure components, whether it was ESXi host or vCenter, NSX, stuff like that. Checking for known vulnerabilities and misconfigurations.
Cool. So you had that integrated into your like threat intelligence feeds, and if you saw like a critical vulnerability come out, you'd be like, "Oh, hey,
That is correct. That is
it's
correct.
like whack-a-mole."
It is whack-a-mole.
Oh my
People
goodness.
hate when I make the Swiss cheese analysis, but security is, the truth of it is Swiss cheese is just plugging a hole. I mean, new holes are created every day, every minute, every second, right? And
Yeah.
it's just it is security is best effort, no matter who tells you it's not. So
Yeah, you always have to plan for that worst case scenario.
yeah.
Well, my next question was like, how do you handle patch management and updates? But I kind of feel like you kind of walked me through your experience with different dev environments, right? You would triage this with various teams within your organization. So
That's
you would
right.
have a person that you would go to for your accounting software and say, "Hey, can we test out this new version? It
That's right.
addresses these particular vulnerabilities." Do you want to kind of fill us in a little bit more about what's happening behind the scenes, maybe like within your leadership teams? Because I would assume you'd probably also want to make sure you get sign off from all of the different stakeholders.
So, you have to stay updated, right? So whether that means, monitoring, VMware's official sources about possible vulnerabilities that are coming up, or any kind of third-party threat feeds, or I mean, there's just too much out there to list, which is a good problem to have. Make sure you stay aware of that, and make sure you're communicating that, from the bottom up, because this is not going to come from the top down, right? It's
Right.
our jobs as practitioners to make sure that all the directors and C-suite are informed of what's going on, and not just report when something happens, but hey, look, this is something out in the wild. We are monitoring it. We look good so far. We're auditing our systems. We're making sure we're patched. We're making sure, everything's good to go, to kind of reduce that attack surface. So,
Right.
it's really important to communicate up, because like I said, a lot of times, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they're informed and they're aware, whether, especially if there's not an attack, but there's keeping your ear to the ground again, and making sure that they understand what the threat landscape actually looks like. And there's possibilities of us being vulnerable because we're running XYZ systems, right? So
Right. Yeah, it's like you can't automate everything. Certain aspects of anyone's job is making sure that you're a strong communicator. And it sounds like, especially within the security space, you want to make sure that that communication is, two-way. It's flowing. You're keeping your stakeholders informed, but you're also keeping informed of what's happening out there in the security community.
absolutely, and it's not hard to do. It's as simple as a Google search. Hey, let's go find some threat feeds and get an RSS reader or whatever. I mean, I know that's kind of silly, and but I'm just, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
And a lot of companies, they haven't even started. Still to this day, as many cyber events and attacks we've seen on the news, some people are just kind of winging it as they go, right?
Right. Well, and it's funny that you mention security feeds, and this is something that we talked about in our last episode on clean rooms with Mr. Mayor. Judd, do you have any particular security feeds that you like to go to? I know I like TLDRSec. I like to have a couple places I go out on Reddit and other feeds. Do you have any particular threat feeds that you like to have on your homepage or subscribe to?
I pretty much the ones you listed. Those are pretty much what I subscribe to as well. So as well as make sure you're on all the mailing lists, like for VMware, and make sure you have all the categories selected, to be informed if something's going on.
Yeah, CISA, that's another one that's really good.
Yeah, so I would say not just RSS feeds, but make sure you're on you subscribe to the mail list for your software vendors, right? Because
Yep.
that's usually where it's going to come from first or fastest, hopefully, right? So.
Right. Yeah. If you're using Amazon Web Services, they have Guard Duty, which tunes into a lot of different intelligence feeds. So, any native tools that you work in, including VMware, you can definitely leverage those resources first because that will give you a lot of good intel.
Yeah.
Another question I had was, kind of based off of your experience, Jed, and what you've seen out in the industry, what are some common vulnerabilities that a lot of organizations are running into with VMware, and how have you mitigated them in the past?
So some of the common vulnerabilities are today, I think the most recent are at the hypervisor level, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
ESXi or if it's your management piece in regards to VMware, it would be like vCenter. Also the network, storage, let's see, in secure configurations, right? Things being misconfigured,
Yeah,
not actually logging or monitoring your systems at all or insufficiently, right?
or
Or
having overly permissive privileges too. I could
that's
see that.
that's a huge one. That should probably be right under making sure, or right above making sure your systems are patched. As well as, I think another one of the big ones is when the risk you you put in your environment when you add things like third-party integrations and plugins, right? Because this isn't your code, right? You have to
Hmm.
give certain level of permissions for these to interact with your systems. So I mean, I don't want to name any company names, but we've seen how third-party software vendors and integrations have played into this landscape in the past. So
Right.
and it's mitigation strategies. It's not a complicated thing, and it doesn't have to be expensive. If you are already running these systems, especially VMware, 9 times out of 10, you're already going to have, you know, access to, updates and automating those things. So I would say make sure you're doing regular patching and updates. Do micro segmentation or network segmentation. And in VMware, I do this with NSX, is make sure you're doing micro segmentation to kind of reduce the attack surface by blocking. Let's just use virtual desktops or virtual servers, for instance, blocking that east-west traffic, making
Hmm.
sure that they can't communicate with each other unless you absolutely need to. So if there's an application server that needs to talk to a specific SQL server, making sure that communication, whether it's east-west, is locked down, right? Because we're always talking about north-south, and you have your firewall at the edge and this, that, and the other. But I think it's just as important these days to make sure you're locking down the east-west traffic as well. Another thing that you'll always hear me harp on is awareness and training.
Yeah.
Definitely when it comes to security, whether it's doing simulated phishing attacks through, say, like KnowBe4, and especially educating your admins, right, and your end users. So, I don't want to lay this all at the feet of just end users. You have to educate your admins as well, right?
Right.
And also trying to not find yourself in the situation, but try to prevent it and get ahead of it with penetration testing and vulnerability assessments, right? Knowing your weak points, I think is right at the top of the list of where you start or begin with this whole mitigation process.
Yeah, almost like game day exercises
That's
where
right.
where you go and you simulate a live event, make sure that you have the ability to fail over or quickly respond to it.
Yeah, it starts with getting everyone in a room on a whiteboard and laying everything out, getting that plan, get it formalized, and then you start testing and rehearsing and all that other jazz.
Yeah, reminds me of breaches and backdoors. It's a card game you can play with your security teams where you go through common security scenarios. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. It makes me think of like D&D or something, corporate D&D. But it works, going through those scenarios and making sure that you have the right people involved. So, no, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Well, can you share a scenario where having a robust security strategy like this may have helped when dealing with an active incident?
Yeah, so I don't want to get into too much detail, right? Because former employers don't want their business out there, but I'll try to keep it as broad and vague as I can. So let's just imagine you're a company and you have hundreds of remote sites that you're responsible for their networks and providing resources to them. And so they're not necessarily 100% under your control, but you're providing these resources almost kind of like this chargeback scenario, right? You know, some of these companies, they give you resources to do your job because the departments are so big, you know, they charge you back for desktop and compute resources, this, that, and the other. So almost like I'm a managed service provider in that sense, but we weren't. So we're responsible for these systems. And, you know, this opens up us to attack because we're allowing these remote sites to have access to our resources as well as their own, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're hit with a ransomware attack. So if we didn't have some of these, I say some, we had all these in place. We were using microsegmentation to make sure when their desktop got infected, guess what? It wasn't hitting my site, right? It was just simply shut down that PC, rip it off the network, make sure it didn't spread, bring that thing back, put it in a clean room environment, or in this case, just don't plug it into the network, boot it up and start running your forensic tools. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, and seeing what's what. So yeah, that's happened more than once. So it's important to have these things in place to prevent the spread, especially, right? You know, because, you know, if they hit something like Active Directory, I mean, ooh, that's right. It's just so much more time you have to spend on rebuilding or cleaning up, rebuilding, and all the other stuff. So if you could take some of these simple approach, microsegmentation might not be the most simple approach for some people, but you don't have to have NSX. You can do VLANs and other things like that to put in place because, well, if you have a network, you have switches, you have routers, you have firewalls.
So were all these different environments integrated with maybe like a broader SIM tool or a broader vulnerability management tool?
So we had, how do I put, like I said, I got to be careful about what I say. We had all the various tools you could think of for detection, mm-hmm. for running our own assessments to make sure that we're, you know, patching everything. It'll provide you with the CVEs and all the other stuff. So we had all these tools. We had security analysts that would run those tools, and they worked with the network engineers and admins to make sure that we're all communicating and we're all making sure that our assigned systems and infrastructures are patched. And, you know, if you're not using SSH on an SXI host, make sure that that's, you know, turned off, right?
Yeah, turn off insecure protocols.
Yeah, turn off insecure protocols and stuff. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh, that is really, really cool. So it really just, it sounds like, you know, with vulnerability management, it's one of those things that is constantly evolving, constantly changing. For a lot of organizations out there, you know, the best thing you can do is just stay informed. I know, like, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen some high profile events happen in the news related to different threats that are out there. So I think, you know, just sitting down with you, Jed, and just hearing some of your personal experiences, was very valuable, especially for me. I really loved hearing about how you've dealt with, you know, security events in your previous roles, and just learning more about how quickly responding, recovering, and mitigating can really help minimize any potential damage. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
Yeah, look, I would reiterate, this is not rocket science. A lot of people are not even doing the basics. which is making sure you're on a regular patching schedule. You're testing these patches before you roll them out to production. Do some kind of segmentation. Make sure that your apps and systems or workloads are only talking, least privilege, are only talking to what they, other servers that they need to talk to, whether that's an app server talking to a SQL server, et cetera. Make sure that you do quarterly, biannual, annual reviews, of all your configurations and pen testing, vulnerability assessments. Pay for a third-party audit to come in once a year. I'm from state and local government, so we had to do these things.
Right.
So and again, I think like I said, I'll always come back to security awareness and training. Make sure you educate your admins and your end users. I think that is a really good first step, is making sure, hey, if this email looks hinky or suspicious, don't click on it, right?
Right.
And make sure your admins know their systems. They understand and are educated on, the possible threats out there. Making sure that they're patched, making sure unnecessary protocols and chatter is turned off, and things like that.
No, that's great. Also, I want to let the audience know that Jed and myself are going to be out at VMware Explore on August 27th. We're going to be doing a talk on vulnerability management within the VMware space. We'll make sure to link out that session in the comments, so definitely check that out. Also, here at Cohesity, we have a lot of resources that you can leverage if you want to learn more about data security, including an integration that we have with Tenable, Cohesity Data Hawk. We have a Tenable integration, and you can actually access that out on the Cohesity marketplace. We have videos showing how to set up the integration. We actually have a previous Tech Insight episode where we do have a session here with VMware or with Tenable. So definitely check that out. So this wraps up another episode of Cohesity Tech Insights. Thanks for watching, everyone.